In this video, I want to share my story of learning English from beginner to advanced. Hi friends, my name is Nastya and English is my third language. In this video, I want to share my experience of learning English, how did I learn English, and also share some tips and tricks along the way. And before we get going, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you like videos about languages, about tech and life. I wanted to learn English since I was 6 years old, and that's when my grandma came back from the United States to Moscow and she could speak some English. To me, it was fascinating that she could tell and understand some sentences in English, and it was like magic for me that some people on this planet could understand those words or those combination of words that I saw in English dictionary. That's how I got curious. But unfortunately, I couldn't take English classes at school. I only had one option, French, which is a very long story. But to make it short, my first lessons that I had, English lessons, I started taking them when I was 16. So that was already in high school and it was with a private tutor. So then I realized that probably it was time to finally start those English classes because English was something I always wanted to learn. I was taking English classes with a private tutor 1 hour per week, and I had been doing this for 1 hour. So I had to drop within 1 hour because, well, it was my last year at high school and I wanted to prepare for my final exams, and I picked French and it made sense to me to just focus on one foreign language instead of two. So I decided after 1 year of those classes, I decided to stop for some time, and I must say that I don't think I learned as much that year, and that's totally on me because it was only 1 hour and also I didn't do a lot on my own. I was mostly busy with my high school stuff but not with those English lessons. That's why I kind of learned some basic things which would be useful later on. And also another important thing is that I had an amazing tutor. I loved her, and because of her I never lost the motivation to actually learn English. So I took this pause to improve my French skills, to pass a French exam and to get into a university. And then when I got accepted into a linguistic university in Moscow, I was thrilled to know that my second language was gonna be English. So our English classes at university started maybe when we were 5 months in our freshman year, and I think they were quite good. At the very least, they were definitely balanced because we did a lot of different things. We had listening practice, speaking practice, also we did grammar exercises, vocabulary practice and reading, and all of it was nice. It's just what was really weird is that our group, we all had different levels. So I was a beginner, but kind of I knew some basic stuff, basic grammar, but we also had complete beginners who didn't know a word, and we had an advanced student or maybe a couple of them, or at least they were already intermediate. So that was quite weird, especially for them. For me, honestly, I saw this as an opportunity because, well, first, I can ask them questions, and also, second, I can learn from them. So when we answer questions, I can also learn by listening to them. But because we had some beginner students who were even more beginner than I was, our classes were kind of slow. So it took quite some time to check our homework, or for some people to answer some questions. So I was kind of getting bored and I felt that I could do better, and I started doing some supplementary grammar exercises. And my tip here is really this: try and put some effort into automating English grammar. By automating, I mean do as much of the exercises as you can to really make the basic grammar rules are natural to you. So you don't even have to think about how do I form present simple or past simple. Make it so it is really easy for you to retrieve that information from your brain. I found an old Soviet book about English grammar. It was only about grammar. It had a lot of chapters, and each chapter was dedicated to a particular rule or a tense. And it also had a lot of similar exercises. And that thing, I know many people don't like it, don't like this particular book, but it helped me to automate so many topics of basic English grammar. That's how I learned tenses, prepositions, and a whole lot of other stuff. And also sometimes I was doing it right during our classes because I thought they were too slow and I thought I could be more productive. So I was doing a lot of exercises and checking them myself to make sure everything was correct. I found keys to the exercises on the internet and I was doing fine, you know. I did not feel too bored. I don't know, maybe there is something wrong with me, but I didn't feel too wrong. Anyways, I decided that I needed to incorporate English into my life somehow. So at that point, I was watching NHL hockey games, and that was already in English. That was something, but I decided that I needed to go further and I started reading about hockey in English. So I found some articles on the internet about my favorite team and I just translated them and learned the vocabulary, which turned out to be quite useful later on when I watched a hockey game, because the people who comment on the game, they sometimes use the same words that I found in the article. Reading those hockey articles, it wasn't the only way I tried to incorporate English. That's also when I started reading in English, particularly to improve my language. And also, I started watching TV series. Of course, back then, my level was maybe A2 or B1 or something like this. But I started by something I already knew. That's how I just rewatched some of the TV series that I watched previously, and the same for movies. There are so many movies in English, obviously, and I watched many of them in Russian, and I decided I would give them a try in English as well. And that's something I recommend to people who just start learning a language, because, well, any movie and any TV series is not gonna be beginner friendly because they don't make them to be, but it is really helpful if you want to start out with watching TV series and movies in a foreign language. I think it is really nice to start with something you already know. So, for instance, like Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter. And also I watched it so many times, so watching it in English was kind of easy for me because I already knew the plot at the very least, I knew the characters, and I basically knew what was going on in the movie. So it wasn't that hard to watch it even without being fluent in English. This is also the time when I started translating my favorite English songs. I had so many favorite English songs, but I never knew what they were singing. I just liked the music. That was the reason I was listening to them. And finally, I could understand something. And it was just amazing knowing that, wow, you finally understand what they are saying. This is also nice. So the whole point of incorporating English into my life was doing something I enjoy in English. This is definitely my list. Might not be applicable to you, but here I would definitely suggest to just think about what you like to do and what are the things you can do in your target language among those things that you like to do, obviously. Adding more listening into my life was my next step. At school we had a lot of different classes. We had a separate class for reading, for general English and like English grammar and vocabulary. We had press lesson to study English speaking press, and we did a lot of listening comprehension exercises during all of those classes. I'm so grateful, and I think we were so lucky to get good teachers who knew the importance of interesting and engaging listening material for classes. So we got a lot of those, and that was actually something that inspired me to just get even more listening and maybe to start listening something in my free time. And that's how I found and discovered, I should say, discovered the world of podcasts. I did not know what a podcast was before that, and then I decided to look it up, and I found so many interesting podcasts about English in English. I started with podcasts like 6-Minute English or similar, for English learning, and then I found a lot more podcasts about just everything. And I love listening podcasts, and now in French and English, and all of it thanks to my English learning journey. I highly encourage you to start listening to the English speech as soon as you can, whatever your level is and whatever you want to listen to. There are some studies that show that just being exposed to a language can boost your learning process. I started listening when it was my 3rd year at university, and I bet my progress could be even faster if I had started earlier. Switching to consuming information in English. That was quite an important step in my life when it was my 4th year at school. If before everything I told you I did intentionally to learn English. So I was rewatching TV series, I was reading books just to learn English. But at this point, I decided that I actually need to kind of live in English. So I just started doing my usual activities in English. I always love to watch TV series, unfortunately, and I get addicted to them pretty easily, but that's not the point. What is though is that I just switched to watching Netflix in English. With subtitles, English subtitles, but still, I switched to reading in English. I love to read, especially in Moscow with commute time and subway. It's just so easy to pick up a book when you're in a subway train. And I just switched to reading in English. I must say it was not as pleasant in the beginning as it used to be in my native language, because my brain was just exploding, and also I was so slow in reading and watching TV series. Sometimes I had to stop it just to check a word, or just to verify my understanding of something, or just even rewatch a couple of minutes to better understand what happened. But with time I just got used to it, and then I also started Googling in English, started writing to-do lists and grocery shopping lists in English, and gradually it all became very natural to me. Studying programming in English. Also, my last year at university, I started taking programming courses. Don't ask me why. I was just curious, and for some reason I had to take it in English. So I started learning HTML, and the course that I chose was in English. Later on, it did come in handy because I decided to switch to programming, and I already kind of knew the relevant vocabulary in English. Listening to the podcasts, consuming information in English, all of it is good, but also, what about speaking practice? And here I must say that I didn't really have a lot of speaking practice outside of school. As I said, we did have balanced classes and we did practice speaking, but well, speaking with a teacher in a classroom or with your classmate, it is not exactly the same as using language just out there in the wild. And the only English speaking experience that I got by that time was speaking with my German friend in Latvia. So I went to Latvia, and I met that German guy who became my friend, and we also kept in touch, and we obviously spoke English when we were in Latvia, and then later on we messaged a lot in English, and also he came visit Moscow and we also spoke English. But well, that's basically it. I always struggled to find someone to speak a foreign language, maybe because I felt too shy to ask people, maybe to practice together, and it did not feel fun. But it is definitely something that helps a lot. If you have someone, if you know someone who's a native speaker, if you feel good about it, definitely try to speak to them as much as you can. It feels really motivating to be speaking a foreign language that you've been learning so much time. It motivates and it just makes you realize, wow, I'm kind of using my skills here. By the time I graduated from university, I had B2 level, which is upper intermediate level. I was quite confident about my English. Maybe that's because, I don't know, English language being my third language kind of reduced the cognitive load, this anxiety when you speak a foreign language. I don't know. The only thing though is that I was always kind of ashamed of my pronunciation. I never liked my accents. That's something that demotivated me to speak it. But I was kind of forced to when I moved to the United States. You definitely don't need to move to the United States to speak English, but it does help a lot because English here follows you whenever you go. Grocery shopping, doctor's appointment, maybe ordering something from Amazon, dropping something at a post office. It all becomes an English lesson. At university, we spent so much time learning vocabulary and we were practicing with, fancy exercises, like expressing our opinion, thoughts, ideas, feelings. And when I came here, I realized that I didn't know any practical daily vocabulary, so I had to catch up on a lot of things. I remember it was so frustrating at the beginning here in the US. It was so hard to get a doctor's appointment because I just did not know the vocabulary to explain my symptoms and I had to learn it all before I could call, or how confusing it was just to do grocery shopping. Well, grocery shopping, it is not as confusing because you don't really need to know the words, you just see things and you can read. That's fine, but when you need something specific, when I had to look for something specific, I couldn't ask for help and I had to do everything on my own. And or for instance, I remember how kind of embarrassing that was the first time when I was asking about electric outlet. I needed an electric outlet to plug in my MacBook and I did not know the word electric outlet or even plug in, or I even forgot charge at that point, and I had to somehow explain with gestures and some weird words. I was trying to ask, where is electric outlet? And everything kind of was slower in my day-to-day life because I had to take a pause, search the right word, or maybe even have kind of an English lesson to prepare myself for something and only then go and do it. But this was definitely a lot of fun. It didn't feel boring and I don't think I felt overwhelmed. Maybe frustrated a little bit confused at times. Yes, but not overwhelmed. Maybe that's because I already had a pretty good level of English and I still could express myself, or at the very least I knew grammar pretty well, so the skeleton of a sentence was there, so I just had some empty spaces for vocabulary. And the last step of the journey till now is getting a full-time job. So at first I had mostly freelancing projects and part-time jobs, and I didn't really have to speak English as much. But once I joined a company as a full-time employee, I had to communicate in English 8 hours straight. Well, not straight, but more than usual. And I remember having so many terrible headaches at the end of every day because I had to speak English too much. All that feeling of cheek pain because you just spoke too much. And that's also how I felt at the beginning of my full-time employee journey. When I came here to the US, I also got inspired to do some more grammar exercises, but more advanced one. That's when I got this book and did some more grammar exercises. I guess I just like, this boring and disciplined way of just sitting here reading and doing exercises, highlighting things. I didn't do the whole thing though, probably when I'll have time. What I like to do is to identify what were the biggest pain points for me and for my English, and I did those chapters that kind of solved my problem. And I love this book. Only if I knew about this book earlier. That's my story of learning English from beginner's level to advanced. Hopefully you'll learn something interesting, or you got some ideas for action if you're learning English, and you will like this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. I'll hope to see you in my next one. See you guys!